Welcome everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. Our topic for the day is how much should you pay for a new computer? I'm so glad all of you could join us today as we go through our topic. If you have any questions, feel free to throw those into the chat and I will circle back at the end to answer those. Unless you know how a computer works and what the device specifications mean, it's very difficult to know what computer you need. Not all computers are made equal, and often the cheapest computer you can get will end up costing you more than the top end computer. So before we jump into prices, I'm going to give you my first tip when you're buying computers for a business. And that is to prioritize your requirements before you prioritize your price. So let me unpack that. There are lots of different kinds of computers, and they are suitable for lots of different types of tasks. If you're buying a computer for your personal use, it is a good strategy to come up with a budget and then get the most powerful computer you can with the budget that you have. This is not a good strategy for buying a computer for business use. Before you create your budget, you first should figure out how you are going to use that computer, and based on that, you can figure out what requirements you have. Let's look at an example. Let's say you purchase a computer for $300. After a few days, some problems start to arise. The computer becomes really slow. It starts to crash, runs out of storage, stops connecting to the internet. After another week of problems and $200 to figure out what's wrong and to get it back and working, you learn that it will cost $300 in parts and another $200 in labor to upgrade the computer to do what you want it to. Well, you need the computer to work, so you pay for the upgrade. Now, a $300 computer cost $1,000, and it is only barely able to do what you wanted. That $900 computer that you saw when you were first purchasing the computer seems like a much better deal. It can do what you have now, but better for a much longer time. Computer hardware follows the laws of physics, and there is only a certain amount of load that a given computer can handle. And the work you do every day has a given amount of load. They physically cannot do more load than they are equipped to handle unless you somehow are able to suspend reality and the laws of physics. Since I can't do that, and neither can you, we have to first know what requirements we have for our computer before we can accurately purchase one. With that established, what I'm going to do in the rest of this presentation is look at different price ranges and talk about what computers in this range are equipped to handle. This can give you a kind of a rough idea as to how much you should pay for a given computer. Some cheaper computers do have their uses, and I'm not saying you should never buy a cheap computer, but you should know what you intend to do with the computer before you purchase it. Any gap between your needs and the computer's capability will have to be solved one way or another. First, we're going to look at the big decision of laptops versus desktops. And this is purely up to you and your business's needs. I'm going to go over both, and you can kind of see different price ranges for that. But this lets you decide, what do you need? Does your job function need a laptop or a desktop? With that said, let's jump on to laptops. The first category is for laptops less than $300. I have put kind of a simple framework for how all of these slides will look, so you can go back and see each of these different categories if you want to. But for this price range, you are going to get the minimum necessary requirements in order for the computer to turn on. If you look at Windows, their minimum requirements to turn on are basically what I have listed here for computers less than $300. Computers, laptops specifically in this price range, they basically can connect to the internet and run one single web-based application. So that might be your web browser. Anything beyond that, they can't do. The next range for our laptops is the $300 to $500 range. This is one step up from the absolute minimum required to turn on, but it is still fairly low. You're going to get, here you see the specifications, 8 gigs of memory, maybe 512 gigs of storage. This is a good laptop for light web browsing and word processing. It does not do very well with heavy web browsing or running various applications. Our next category is the $500 to $1,000 range laptops. This is where you're starting to get into a laptop that is potentially fits your needs from a day-to-day office working perspective. You're getting more memory, more storage, and a better processor. This gives you the ability to have a standard level of web browsing with multiple tabs open and different things running at the same time. And it lets you run various applications in parallel, and you should not see any issue. The last category is the $1,000 to $5,000 range for laptops. This is going to give you much more memory, much more storage, and a much better processor. This is for the heavy web browser, people who have many tabs open. And if your laptop needs to run a specialized application, this is the range that you're looking at. Some offices have a server that computers connect to. That would not be running the application, the specialized application locally. So if your office has a server or a cloud-based solution that your computer connects to, that does not count as a specialized application. That would count as a web-based application. Even if it's your local server that it is connecting to, it's still connecting to a different computer. But if your computer is required to run a local application, I would not recommend looking at computers that are less than $1,000. With that said, we're going to move on to desktops, and they are pretty much fit in these same categories, but the prices have shifted down. One thing to keep in mind is that these categories do not include, or desktops are just the desktop. They don't include any of the peripherals. So oftentimes, even though the price of the desktop is lower than the laptop, in some categories, it will end up costing a little bit more to add all of the peripherals like monitors, keyboards, etc. Again, for our less than $100 range, you're looking at laptops that barely meet the minimum requirements to turn on. Some uses for these laptop or these desktops could be if you have a small computer running a single application at the door when somebody walks in and like has like a check-in program where they can log in and say, I'm here for an appointment or something like that. These kinds of computers, the laptops and desktops that meet the minimum requirements, they can serve a function, but that function is doing one thing in a very limited format. Again, our next category is the $100 to $400 range. You're looking at one step up from the minimum requirements to turn on. And these computers are good for light browsing, light word processing, a very light use for these. Again, the $400 to $800 range. This is the range where you're looking at starting to have a good computer for an office computer, for something that can browse the web more, run a few applications, and have multiple monitors. And then for the $800 plus desktops, these are desktops that are for more specialized applications or for heavy loads, either through web browsing or running local applications. With that, I hope it has been helpful. I tried to make it as simple and straightforward as I could, giving you the different categories for what each price range of computer can do. And hopefully with this, you can kind of get a rough idea, given these are the tasks that I have. This is kind of the price range that I'm looking at. If you have any questions, I will answer those, but if not, we will end our webinar today. I am not seeing any questions, so with that, I will go ahead and end it. Thanks everyone for joining. Oh, I do see one question came in the last minute. What brands do I recommend? There are various brands. Ultimately, we're looking at kind of the standard Dell, Lenovo, HP. There are lots of good brands, but really what's more important than the brand is having the right specifications. So meeting those, the memory, the storage, the processor, those are the biggest categories, meeting those specifications. And then typically, if you recognize the brand, it's fine. If the specifications meet what you have and the brand is something you recognize, then you should be good. There are some strange brands that people create that you've never heard of. I would stay away from a brand name that you would just never have thought of. Another question for the life expectancy, it definitely depends on the category of computer that you purchase. So the lower end computers are going to last between 1 to 2 years, maybe 3 if you're pushing it. So lower end would, I would say it would be less than $500. Then in a $500 to $1,000 range computers, you're looking at computers that could last 3, maybe 4 years. And then for the $1,000 and up computers, they should hopefully last you 4 or maybe even 5 years. That would be a good life expectancy for a computer. All right, I believe that is all the questions. I will end it today and thank you all for joining.